was making. A lot of people were telling me I was making dumb decisions politically, that this was going to bite me, that I wouldn't be reelected, all this other stuff. And, you know, a leader has got to care more about protecting the jobs and well-being of the people he represents than he does about protecting his own political hide. And so I made those decisions. I was happy to let the chips fall where they may. And we fought back about all those different things. Now it's even gotten to the point, as much as I was hammered and pilloried and all that stuff for having kids in school, businesses open, all that stuff, not closing beaches, whatever you want to say, churches open, it all comes full circle to where a couple weeks ago I'm on a debate stage with the governor of California, Gavin, Newsom, and instead of him defending his lockdown policies, he tried to act like California was the free state and somehow Florida. That shows you that you know that we got it right. Second time, another example, we have, and why we're even having to do some of these fights is beyond me, but there's an effort to use schools to indoctrinate kids, particularly now even young kids, and with sexually explicit materials. I think that's wrong. As a father of a first grader, kindergartner, preschooler, I'm sensitive to it. It's wrong. We shouldn't have it. You should not be teaching a kindergartner that they can change genders. You shouldn't be teaching a second grader that they are born in the wrong body. It's wrong. So we had legislation in Florida a year or two ago, Parents' Rights in Education, and basically it said there's not going to be sexualization of the curriculum, particularly in these elementary school grades. And most parents agreed with that. Most people agreed with that. The left didn't agree with it, and they didn't like it. The media didn't like it, which is to be expected. But then we had the most powerful company in Florida, Disney, that didn't like it. And they came after this legislation. And if you know anything about Florida, basically when they weigh in, usually that's it. No one really stands up to them or has not, because it's just like, man, they're the most powerful company. But you know, I took an oath to support and defend the people that elected me, not to subcontract out my leadership to woke corporations based in Burbank, California. So we stood strong, we fought back, and we won that battle. And our schools are doing much better as a result. So you got to be willing when it's not easy. You got to have somebody that's going to be willing to take the heat on your behalf. My job is to take the arrows so you don't have to. And I'm sick of Republicans who cave or are worried about what the media says or worried about what the left says. The other thing you need to do is you need to be able to win. And part of that is winning the election, of course. And as Casey mentioned, I have the best track record in elections of anybody that's running on our side. Every time I've been on the ballot, we've overperformed what the expectations were, and we won the greatest victory that any Republicans ever won in the history of the state of Florida in 2022. So we need to do that. I know how to beat these Democrats. I've done it in Florida. We did it against Newsom the other night in that debate, and I'll make sure that that happens, not just with President, but Congress, Senate, and all these other key offices. We'll have coattails. We'll get the job done. But even more important than that is, okay, you get in there, you've got to win these battles on behalf of the American people. Because if we don't actually deliver, then we're not going to be able to turn the country around. And there's nobody running for president that has a record of beating the people that are causing so much damage to our country as me. We beat the teachers union when we did universal school choice in Florida. We beat Soros when we removed 2 radical left-wing prosecutors who weren't enforcing the law. We beat Disney on the sexualization of the elementary school curriculum. We beat the Democrats on ensuring election integrity measures throughout the state of Florida. And on it goes. We have moved the needle in the state of Florida. They used to say our state was a politically balanced state. Now, we have major Republican state because we've put points on the board and we've delivered big results. So we've got to win for this country. We've got to be able to get these things done. I'm sick of talking about them. We know what the problems are. We need a leader who's going to be able to deliver those results. And that's the final thing the country's lacking is leadership. It seems like everybody's got their own little agenda. Some people are trying to make money here or trying to do this there or pushing all this. We need leadership. And leadership is about putting forth a vision where this country goes, and then executing that vision even in the face of opposition, because it's easy when the wind's at your back. The wind's at your back, anyone can be a leader. The question is when you get up to D.C. And you're going to deal with this bureaucracy and reduce it back down to size, they're not going to do that willingly. They're going to come after you. When you go after the border, they're not going to like that. There's going to be people who are going to come after you, but a leader is going to be willing to execute in the face of that opposition, and we've shown an ability to do that time and time again. So this is what we have to do. And oh, by the way, we also need to nominate someone who can not only win in 24, but they can get re-elected in 28. I mean, we want 8 years, not just 4. And so I have that vision, and one of the ways I think about it is after serving those 2 terms, that takes you to January of 2033. If I'm getting ready to leave at that point and looking back on those 8 years, what am I going to be able to tell you we've actually accomplished? Not promises, not slogans, but what have we actually accomplished? One, we're going to be able to say that we restored the American dream in this country. People that work hard, get the most of their God-given ability, are going to be able to get ahead, raise family. You're not going to be beset with high costs, high interest rates. We'll have reversed Bidenomics and gotten the bureaucracy off the back of the economy. We will have opened up all of our energy for production, so we will have lowered gas prices and energy costs and made America energy dominant. And we will also have reduced the federal government and the Congress from spending so much money and causing all these problems in the first place. Other thing, we'll be able to say we've restored the sovereignty of our country. Drug cartels will no longer be controlling our southern border. Illegals will no longer be pouring into this country. Fentanyl is not going to be poisoning our citizens in record numbers. There will be a wall that will have actually finally been built to stop the flow. We're also going to be able to say that we've restored the U.S. military to its rightful place, that we will have gotten the woke agenda out of the military, focused it on mission first, fended off the threat posed by the Chinese Communist Party, and that the 21st century is indeed an American century, not a Chinese century. We'll also be able to say that schools in this country are educating kids but not indoctrinating kids, that we have the rights of parents respected, that we'll have the rights of parents respected to direct the education and upbringing of their kids, that we will have a new emphasis across the country on American civics and teaching kids about the Constitution and what it means to be an American, and we will have left the woke mind virus in the dustbin of history where it belongs. We'll also be able to say that whether you live in a red state or a blue city, criminals are held responsible for their crimes. We will have every community in this country respecting the men and women of law enforcement who risk their lives to keep us safe. We're not going to let the inmates run the asylum, and we will have restored the rule of law in this country from sea to shining sea. We'll also be able to say that we have restored the U.S. Constitution to its rightful place as the centerpiece of our national life. That means a limited government that works alongside us, not an unaccountable, unlimited bureaucracy that's weaponized against us, that imposes its will on us without our consent. We will have brought a reckoning to all the agencies that were involved in COVID-19 lockdown policies, mandates, restrictions, and you will be rest assured that something like that will never happen in this country ever again. We are going to go and finally bring this administrative state to heel. We will have returned the government to its rightful owners, which is we, the American people. And we'll be able to say we did a lot more than that. But if we can just say all those things, then we'll be able to say that we've restored America to what President Reagan called a shining city on a hill, that we will have left her freer and more prosperous than what we inherited, and that we will have done our duty as Americans to make sure that America's best days still remain ahead of us. And I think about all the way back to the founding of this country. When the Founding Fathers met in Philadelphia to create our Constitution, they studied the history of every republic and the history of mankind because they wanted to draw lessons from those experiences. The one thing that all these republics had in common throughout history was this: every one of them had failed. So our founders understood it fell to this country, these United States of America, to determine once and for all, can people really govern themselves? Can you have a society based on the idea that our rights come from God, not from the government, that we live under a rule of law, not the whim of individual men? Or was mankind forever destined to live under various forms of despotism? And they fully expected that this country would decide that question. But they also understood just writing a Declaration of Independence and then later creating that Constitution, that was just the ticket to the dance. That didn't ultimately answer the question. When Benjamin Franklin walked out of that convention, he was asked, "Did you give us a republic or a monarchy?" He said, "A republic if you can keep it." Because they understand you can have the best Constitution in the world, you can have the best Declaration of Independence in the world. These things do not run on autopilot. They require every generation of Americans to step up and defend freedom when it's threatened, sometimes even having to put on a uniform, risk your life, and even give the last full measure of devotion for service to this country. Now, we are not called upon to make sacrifices of that nature here now in this political season, but what we are called upon to do is to make sure we do our part to vindicate the sacrifices of those who've come before us. We have a responsibility to preserve what George Washington called the sacred fire of liberty. This is a fire that burned in Independence Hall in 1776, when 56 men pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to create a new nation conceived in liberty. It's a fire that burned at a cemetery in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, when our nation's first Republican president pledged this nation to a new birth of freedom. It's a fire that burned when a merry band of brothers stormed the beaches of Normandy, eventually beat the Nazis and preserved liberty throughout the world. It's a fire that burned at the foot of the Berlin Wall, when a resolute Republican president stood in front of that wall and said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall," eventually leading to the collapse of the Soviet Union. This is our responsibility, to carry this torch and to preserve this sacred fire of liberty. It's not a responsibility I shy away from. It's a responsibility that I welcome. It's not going to be easy. There's going to be arrows. There's going to be insults. They're going to come after us. But we are going to get the job done. I assure you, as the nominee of the party, we will sweep to victory next November. That's just what we do. As a leader, I always conduct myself in a way that you can be proud of. And as your president, I will get the job for you and promise I will not let you down. Thank you all. God bless you. Happy to take some questions. Yes. So one of the things I'm going to do is work to enact, and I have a plan to do it, term limits for members of Congress. We need that. And it's one of the few issues that whether you're Republican, Democrat, male, female, black, white, across all demographics, people want to see term limits for members of Congress. Now, Congress is never going to enact that, and you would need to do it on a constitutional amendment, so they're never going to do it. But under Article 5 of the Constitution, you can also have the states amend the Constitution. So Florida's already certified a term limits amendment. Other states have done it. As president, I'll use the bully pulpit to rally states to pass term limits amendment that we can impose on Washington, D.C., which should not be there where you're there for 40 years. You should go there for a short amount of time, get things done, deliver good results, and then go live under the laws that you pass. So yeah, we're going to do term limits, absolutely. DOJ? So one of the agencies that needs a reckoning is the U.S. Department of Justice, the DOJ. And I'm the guy to do it. It was interesting. I did a radio interview the other day. I think it was with Hugh Hewitt. He was in the Reagan administration. I actually served as a special assistant way back in the day. And back in those days, like the DOJ was viewed as very professional. It was not viewed as political. And I don't know when it really changed. Definitely under Obama, it started to really change, in a more radical direction. And now it's just so hyper politicized and weaponized that you really have main justice is the enforcement arm of one faction of our society against all these other factions, against people that they don't like. And so people have lost confidence in the agency. People have lost confidence in the FBI because of what they've done. And they've done a number of things. I mean, one, the whole Russia collusion hoax was a massive abuse of power by the FBI, by the intel agencies, and by the Department of Justice. I was on the front lines during that fighting back. There were like 3 Republicans in the country who were willing to stand up and speak out about it, because a lot of the Republicans, right after the 2016 election, a lot of the Republicans in Washington believed the collusion. I was one of the few pushing back against it, but the amount of abuse was really shocking to me that they can do that. And then we've seen so many other examples. You've seen parents going to school board meetings surveilled by FBI, really? And that memo has never been rescinded that Garland wrote that brought that in. They've gone after people. They've said that observant Catholics are potential terrorists. They've colluded with big tech to censor dissent. So this is a huge, huge problem. So one of the things I'll do, when they're involved in abusing their power, they are going to get fired on the spot, okay? We cannot have no accountability. You've got to have accountability. The other thing is on day one, you'll have a new FBI director, no questions asked. And we're going to clean house at DOJ. But here's the problem. When they're abusing power, weaponizing power, that's bad, because especially if you're on the receiving end of it, that's just not right. But what it also does is it takes their eye off the ball of what they actually should be doing. There's terrorists coming across our border, and yet people are just letting it happen. That's what you should be focusing on, stopping that. We see all kinds of other criminal activity. That's what you should be focusing on. We have prosecutors in some of these cities. They don't even prosecute a lot of the crimes. That's what you should be focusing on. So don't worry about censoring speech. Don't worry about going after your political opponents. That's not the proper use of those offices. So we're going to fire people. We're going to be involved in setting the proper course. But it's going to be big, big changes when I'm president. Don't worry about that.
A number of the states are completely ignoring the Second Amendment and the Supreme Court. And doubling down on their efforts to completely restrict people from exercising the right to keep their arms. As president, what might you be able to do to get states to actually honor the Second Amendment and the rest of the Constitution?
Well, look, we have a responsibility to ensure that the Constitution is enforced. And I think you're right. If you look, and now New York did lose a case recently, but a lot of these really blue states, I was doing the debate with Gavin Newsom. He said the Second Amendment should be repealed, is what he wants to do. He does not want people to be able to defend themselves. And so you see the direction that they're going with this, really, really dangerous. One of the reasons, though, this is the case is I think the U.S. Supreme Court has not been willing to accept a lot of these cases and rule. Now, they've done some recently, but they went for 10 years, really, without taking any major Second Amendment cases. And the justices that I'll appoint will be justices that are going to want to get the Constitution right and that are going to be willing to rule accordingly. And I do think, if you think about this court, you, at a 2-term president, you may have 4 Supreme Court picks coming up here. This is really, really significant. I mean, we look and said that the Supreme Court, got better because Trump had 3 picks. If the Democrats win again, that could be gone in an instant. And the 2 justices that are, they say, next in line to retire happen to be the 2 best conservative justices, Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito. And if you just appointed Kavanaugh or some of the ones Trump appointed to replace Alito or Thomas, that would actually move the court to the left. So you got to make sure you're nominating justices that are going to be willing to uphold their legacy, because the court is not really a 6-3 court. It's 3 liberals will vote the same way no matter what. You can set your clock to that. Then there's Scalia or Alito and Thomas, and they get it right 99.9% of the time. But then the other 4, Roberts is kind of wishy-washy. You have the others that are good, but not 100%. And so, it's more of like a 3-4-2 court would be the way I would do it. And those 2 really rock-solid justices, the next president may have to replace them. So that's going to be a big thing to do. Of course, Heller was something that Thomas supported, as well as Alito. So we need to get that right, and we will. And we'll protect Second Amendment rights. It's important. Yep.
Do you understand that our Social Security is not an entitlement? And what will you do to protect it?
Yeah, you've been taxed your whole life. So when you're getting a Social Security check, it's not like that's just coming out of the ether somewhere, and it's not the same thing as a welfare check where you're just getting something. So people have paid into it, and I think what's happened over the years, it's not true anymore, but it used to be whatever would be taxed for Social Security would be way more than whatever they would have to spend out to pay the benefits. And that happened for decades. Congress would take that surplus and they would spend it on other things. So when they say Social Security, all this stuff, if Congress had never done that, there would never have ever been a problem with Social Security, but they have taken there. So I think Congress should be the ones to pay the piper. They should stop spending so much money, and it's not the fault of Social Security recipients. So I understand that 100%. Yes, sir. Great question. So the question was, do we have a plan for cities or states that have defunded law enforcement? And in Florida, what we did is we just passed legislation banning local governments from defunding the police. Because it's just like, it's like you can get elected and do things, I get that, but any city council can have 3 yahoos on it that's doing stupid things. So why would I allow them to cut off their nose to spite their face? Why would I want to risk the safety of Floridians because of one dumb decision of 3 people on the city council? So we basically said, if you try to defund police, we'll put the money back in, and we pretty much ended that problem. So I think nationally, it's using the power of the purse to withhold money if they are not keeping their citizens safe. And I think we can do that also with the Soros prosecutors, because as bad as defund the police has been, these Soros prosecutors, they will not prosecute. I get a window into everything that's going on in this country, because anytime there's bad governance, people flee to Florida to we're the refuge, right, for the country. And so people will come and they will tell me, and I've had people move from San Francisco to Florida, and I had a guy tell me that you had these guys broke into his house and were trying to rob him, and he kind of chased them out and went, and the cops eventually apprehended him. And then the cops came to him and said, you're not going to press charges, are you? He's like, yeah, I'm going to press charges. They broke into my house. And the cop's like, well, they're not going to prosecute him in this situation. You go to LA, people get mugged. They don't prosecute the assailant. And so what happens is more and more crime. And it's also, even the really relatively minor crimes, when you ignore that, that leads to bigger crimes. That New York City showed that back in the day with Giuliani. So I think those prosecutors who won't prosecute are also a huge problem. So we're going to hold all of them accountable. And look, people say, I'll hear some Republicans say, well, San Francisco and Philadelphia, these are big Democrat areas, this is what they're voting for, so whatever. But, as a country, we're not going to be successful if every urban area is a total catastrophe. And so we need to hold accountable, and we will do that. Yes?
What is your opinion on potential statehood for Puerto Rico?
So what I would do is I would never do anything to give Democrats any additional Senate seats. So whatever it would be, it would have to be Republican seats or a Republican state to match the Democrat state. I understand how closely divided the country is, and I'm not going to upset them. Yes?
Casey, your secret weapon. She spoke eloquently about you. What do you talk about her?
Well, I don't think she's a secret weapon anymore. I think people know. I think that they see, and part of the thing. So part of when we do this, it's like it's great that she introduces me. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, I also say she should be doing her own events and doing it on her own because she can convince people. And the first time I ever ran for office, it was 2012. We were running for U.S. Congress. I had never run for anything. I had no name ID, no money. So we were just like, you know what? We're just going to go knock on doors. So you know kind of who the Republicans are who vote in these primaries, and you can target that. You get your map, you do it. So I bought her a motorized scooter. I would load it in the bed of my pickup truck. I would drop her off at one side of the neighborhood. I'd go on the other side of the neighborhood. We'd knock, and then we'd finish the neighborhood. Then we'd go to the next. And we did that on and on for a couple months. And, when you're in a primary like that, when nobody really knows any of the candidates, just the fact that you showed up and shook someone's hand, that's a big deal. And a lot of the people that I met to this day will come up to me. I got a lot of those people to vote for me. But the doors that Casey knocked on, she got 99% of the people to vote for me when all was said and done. And, and I think some of it is she does a good job with everything. And then some of it is people will say, well, all right, I don't necessarily know this guy, but if she was willing to marry him and she says that, he must be okay. So that's kind of been the way that she's done with that. But she's done a lot. I think it doesn't really get talked about as much, but in terms of being First Lady of Florida, there's different things you can do. You can mail it in. You can do this. We had a 2-year-old and a 9-month-old when we moved into Tallahassee back at the start of the first term. Then we had another one March of 2020. And so, we've had a lot that we've had to juggle just from the family situation, much less all this other stuff. But she's taken initiatives where she will do things that have made a big difference in the lives of Floridians. So, for example, she's created a program called Hope Florida, Pathway to Prosperity, and it's meant to figure out when people are disadvantaged and they need help, instead of just putting someone on a government program indefinitely, is there a better way to be able to get them on a path to self-sufficiency? So Hope Florida, they created this thing called a care portal, and actually Kim has sent Iowa people down to look at this. You guys are probably going to do something similar. So you have a care portal where churches are plugged into it, charities, individuals, businesses who want to help their community. So if someone comes in, maybe it's like a single mom that's got 2 8-month-old twins, got kicked out of her apartment, needs a place to stay. So you go in, instead of just getting a check for a welfare check, that goes out to the portal, and you know what happens? Some church will come, take her under the wing. Some charity, even individuals will come and help. And when they go through that, they very rarely go back for any more government assistance. They're on a pathway where they're going to be able to do well. And so that's taken a lot of vision, a lot of insight, but that is something that we're going to be applying nationally for a lot of different agencies, particularly the VA. Because the VA is a massive bureaucracy. I remember when I was leaving the Navy, they give me this veterans packet of like these benefits, and I didn't need anything, I was fine, but I looked at it, I didn't even understand. It was red tape, bureaucracy, and it just was not user-friendly. And I think we've seen a lot of veterans just not get serviced well because of the bureaucracy. So what we're going to have is someone goes into the VA, we're going to have a similar portal, every veterans group that wants to plug in, the charities, the businesses, individuals. So someone, maybe they have problems with post-traumatic stress. We've got veterans organizations, like in Florida, I've got organizations that train service dogs to be able to help veterans with post-traumatic stress. Guess what? The suicide rate is very low when they get paired with the service dog. There's other things. Individuals Maybe veterans having a tough time, someone's plugged into that. Maybe they just go take the veteran to lunch, say, you know what, I'm thinking about you, I care about you, let me know if there's anything. That could make all the difference in the world. You're not going to get that through bureaucracy. So I think she has shown the way and to really help people and make a big difference. And you're going to see that all across this country very soon. So thank you. So the questions about right to life and kind of how that differs from others, well, I think, Donald Trump has said that heartbeat protection bills, where you're protecting an unborn that has a detectable heartbeat, he said that's a terrible, terrible thing. And, when he's saying that, like that's here in Iowa, Governor Reynolds has signed a bill. We've signed a bill in Florida. And I think that he had always said that he was pro-life. I mean, why would you object to a state acting to protect life? And then I look back at his speech to the March for Life in 2020 in January. And in that speech, he said that every unborn child was made in the image of God, that every life was a gift, and that every life should be welcomed into the world. Now, I don't know whether he just didn't mean that when he said it, and now he's saying what he really believes, and whether he was pulling the wool over our eyes, or maybe he did mean it then and has changed his position because he thinks politically he needs to do that. Either way, it's unacceptable. That's not standing for principle, and that's not standing for what's right. Nikki Haley, well, I don't even know where to go with what she thinks. I mean, I think you have Hawkeye Haley when she comes here. She'll try to say she's conservative. Then you got nuanced Nikki when she's in New Hampshire, a little bit different. I can only imagine what she would say when she goes to California. So I don't know that she would be dependable on issues that you care about as conservatives across the board. I think she's really a relic of kind of the old failed Republican establishment, corporatist, getting funded from a lot of liberal Democrats on Wall Street, like the head of J.P. Morgan, major Democrats in Silicon Valley pumping in hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars into this PAC. Every time they're doing negative on me, it's from basically Democrats funding her PAC to be able to attack me. But look, we need somebody that's going to fight back. I mean, ESG, this whole idea of these corporations doing environment, social governance policies that are trying to change this country, to kneecap fossil fuels, to do things that are going to mean less freedom for us. She's meeting and supported by all these people like BlackRock. So that's a huge, huge red flag on this. And so I think the way it's interesting, you all have been through Iowa caucuses, probably a lot of you. Normally you got 5 or 6 candidates that are all running saying they're conservative. I think this time it's like I'm the only really one that's standing for conservative values and principles. And so I'm happy to carry that banner, believe me.